Okay, so I'm going to do an overview of Valley Transit Services. I'm Angie Peters, the general manager, by the way, and I promise to stop trying to answer every time you say Angie because you may not be talking to me in this meeting. So our services, all of them are meant to meet the needs of anybody that has any sort of disability or challenge that they experience in the community. I'm going to start with fixed route, which is a service that some people still have some level of barrier to. And so then we'll get into our more tailored services after that. But our fixed route buses run on a set loop throughout town. So we have um, 8 different routes, which will be confusing if you're looking at our route guide because one of them is called Route 9. Many years ago, Route 8 was eliminated and they did not update the numbering on the route system. We are planning some route updates in 2023 and that will be corrected. But all of those routes run off of a pulse system out of our downtown transit center. So every 30 minutes, they come in and go back out and loop in the community. And we have our main line, which technically is an hour-long route, but we have more service on that route to keep it on that 30-minute pulse system. That loops all the way through Eastgate and out into College Place, so it connects all of College Place and Walla Walla on one large loop. We have one route that runs exclusively in College Place, and then the remainder of our routes after that are running exclusively in Walla Walla. This service runs 6:15 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. Those hours are still maintained with our reductions during COVID. However, the 30-minute loop is somewhat limited. Right now, the main lines don't start having that full 30-minute service until 9:30. And currently, routes 6 and 7 are only running on a 60-minute headway, whereas Route 6 historically has run on a 30-minute headway. All of our buses are ADA accessible. They are easier to board for people who have a high level of mobility when using their mobility device. So we also have paratransit, which I'll talk about momentarily, that's for people that would still find that to be a barrier or just getting to the bus stop to be a barrier. We also have bike racks on board, which are great for people to cover the first mile, last mile if they have that capability to ride a bike. So dial-a-ride is the more common term used in the community. The legal term for it in the transit world is paratransit. So I use those terms sort of interchangeably. So if I say paratransit, please know I'm talking about dial-a-ride. That matches the service hours for fixed route. So it does run from 6:15 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. That is currently running at full service levels. We have been able to get that up to full service while fixed route remains somewhat limited at the moment. This is a origin to destination service. So that's a little different for every person that rides. For some people, that's a door to door. For some people, that's a curb to curb. For some people, that's a door through door. So an example of a door through door trip would be that we pick them up at their home and we actually take them inside the building at a medical appointment to drop them off with the receptionist or something like that, because it may be a person that has an intellectual challenge that would mean that they could get lost between the vehicle and the reception area, and we want to prevent that from happening. This is a service that gets modified to meet the need of the passenger. And while we have a base level of what everyone is getting on a trip, we have reasonable accommodations that people can request to make it work better for them. There is an application process to be eligible for this, and it also serves people that are 70 years or older, even if they do not have some sort of disability that would prevent them from using fixed route. So if someone is younger than 70, they would have to have a disability that prevents them from using fixed route to be eligible for this. But once they reach 70, then you're eligible no matter what. VT plus services are the most heavily impacted by COVID right now, and just general staffing levels, which the staffing levels are impacted by COVID. But when they are running normally, it is evening on the weekdays and then Saturday service. Right now, our weekday evening service is not running. We are hoping to get it running again this year, but we know it will not be before summer at the earliest. So I'm going to talk about this, but just know that it's only running on Saturdays right now. So it has 2 deviated fixed route buses that run on a path that is very similar to the main line throughout the daytime fixed route services. It's slightly altered to cover a larger service area. And then it can deviate off of that path to take someone closer to their home for up to 3 blocks. And then outside of the path where the bus is traveling and where the bus can deviate to, we have connector service, and that is essentially a dial-a-ride vehicle that is going in the sort of empty space where the other routes that run during the daytime are no longer running, to connect people to the routes. And that one, unlike the daytime service, which runs on a 30-minute pulse, the evening service runs on a 45-minute pulse. And that's primarily because of the length of the loop that it's running, and trying to keep it timely. We also have job access services, which I think I put on the next slide instead of in this one. Yes, so job access bookends our daytime and evening and weekend service. So right now, job access is running extended hours. Typically, job access would start in the evenings on weekdays at 8:45. It is now starting at 6:30, so it bookends the end of regular fixed route time. And then the weekend hours have not changed. It runs almost the entire day on the weekends. In order to be eligible for job access, you do have to be at 200% of the federal poverty level. It can go anywhere within our connector service zone to get people to work. It can also take people, like pick them up at home with their children, drop the children off at daycare, then drop the parent off at work, and then do the reverse afterwards. So we include that as part of the job commute trip for anyone that has that need. And then for people who are maybe working in a group, so this tends to happen more with like people that work for the port or people that are traveling to work at the dams. But like people who are in a group can do a van pool. We would provide the vehicle. We do all the service on the vehicle. And historically, you have needed to have at least 10 people in a group, but recently the van pool rules for the state have changed. So you can have as few as 4 people in the group, and you do group traveling that way. I can dig in more if there's interest for the van pool program, but I think for the type of services we're talking about for this group, I don't know if van pool is the best choice, but it is a service that we offer. Do you guys have questions about the service after I went through that pretty quickly?
Okay. I didn't know you did the van pool, so that's pretty interesting to know.
Yeah, we have 5 active van pools right now in the community. It's mostly people going out to work on the dams at this point.
I just want to say that my son Brian has been using transit for 15 years, and he pretty much has used all of your systems, depending on his different jobs that he's held. And for every parent that's on here, our Valley Transit is superb. Oh. They keep an eye on Brian. I'm sure he knows darn near all of your drivers, except maybe your newest ones because of COVID. But it's superb. He knows, he has no problem getting that after 5:30 van. He knows way more than I do. So any parent thinking about it, this is really something to practice with your child. They really, really are terribly supportive and great.
Are you doing I know before COVID, you were doing where they would do a training for people that are interested in riding the bus, but they need a little training. Are you still doing that, or is that stopped?
Yes, we
Because of
still offer that. We
Good,
have not had
good.
anyone requesting it during COVID, but we were available to do it. So, and we find it really exciting, actually.
Mhm.
I
It was
wanted
fun.
to-
Oh, go ahead, Carla.
I just wanted to mention, Angie, it's nice to see your face. I wrote you a letter one time and you got back to me about my son losing his key. And one thing I was impressed is that you said that you looked at Terry Huff down here, who's Carla 1 or 2. And she's the one, is the voice behind the video for Valley Transit out and about in Walla Walla. And yeah, and that's something that you can get from the Valley Transit site. It's a nice video that Terry did showing how Mark and Brian use Valley Transit. And one thing that is so true what Terry said, Mark always sits towards the front of the bus. They watch out for him, and my son doesn't have really good communication skills, and I always feel very safe about him riding the bus. So thank you, Angie, and it's nice to see your face.
Thank you. It's nice to see your face too.
Is there any other questions, comments, or?
Just wanted to mention one thing to Angie Peters, and that is I'm not very good at reading the maps and all that, but my son with disabilities is. But one thing I found is I made a phone call down to your office, and they're very helpful about walking you through step by step. So if you happen to make arrangements for your child to take Valley Transit and find the maps for whatever reason a little bit difficult to read, they're really good about helping you at the office.
We love to help with trip planning. I will include it in the email I send to Angie after this meeting. We also recently made a video that is teaching you how to read like timetables, because that's kind of hard and can definitely be a challenge if you're not looking at timetables every day like we are. So that's something that you could look at if you want to try doing it on your own. But we love helping trip plan, so we always welcome a phone call.
If there's no more questions, thank you so much, Angie, for being on this call, and you're more than welcome to stay on and listen through everything, but we appreciate you, and everyone's given you clapping for you. So thank you so much for your information and all you do. Okay. So next off, we're going to move on to housing and what is available in our community. So we have a couple options for tonight. Well, there's many options, but we're going to have Nancy Riggle from Valley Residential Services. She'll be on the call, and she's going to talk about what they offer there. Okay, we're going to go on with, this is Nancy Riggle, Executive Director. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Nancy. How long you've been doing this?
I started when I was just a baby. So I've worked at VRS for 43 years. I actually have worked there before it was VRS. It was run by the Arc of Walla Walla, and we had a large group home. So I've seen a lot of changes in housing issues in the community. And I will touch on some of the things I thought I was going to talk about tonight, but I'll also focus on Valley Residential Services and what we do. Hi to Terry, I haven't seen you in ages. It's good to see you. And Carla and I get to see each other a little more frequently now, so that's always delightful. So all my old buddies in town, that's great to see you. And all my new buddies. Valley Residential Services was incorporated in January of 1982, so it's our 40th anniversary this year. You can believe that. We were really privileged to be one of the top 3, one of the first 3 supported living programs in the state of Washington. Started out in Yakima and then in Bellevue and then in Walla Walla, where we all decided that being part of a large group home with 19 other people with developmental disabilities wasn't exactly the best way for people to live. So in the old days, it started out being called tenant support. And in those days, it was pretty well known that people were pretty nervous about it and thinking it wasn't going to work for people. And it's turned out to be just a wonderful thing for most of the folks that we support. A couple years after the beginning of tenant support, it became intensive tenant support. So it served people who had more severe disabilities. And we provided supports to people 24 hours a day in that environment. What we found, well, especially me, since I've been here forever, is that when you serve people in small homes and duplexes and such throughout the community, you get a lot more bang for the buck, I think. I think people are happier, there are fewer challenging behavioral issues, people get a lot more support in a small environment, and it's just overall a better way to go as far as we know. Some of these stats are a little bit wrong, well, a little bit different now. Last time the port did an employer study, we were the 19th largest employer in Walla Walla County. And that's a pretty noteworthy, I think. We're a large nonprofit agency, so nobody here is getting rich. We're there for the needs of the people. And we have 170 staff people about at this point in time, serve 69 people in a wide variety of support. So some people live by themselves, some people have up to 3 roommates. And the challenges, I'd say, for us are matching people, all around matching people. And Carla and Terry are probably, familiar with this too, because sometimes what you think might be the perfect match doesn't end up being the perfect match in the long run. When somebody's a homebody and doesn't want to leave the house very often, and somebody else is raring to go all the time, sometimes that can be difficult if you're staffing that house with only one staff person 24 hours a day. You don't want somebody to be holding somebody else hostage in their home because the other person doesn't want to get out. Sometimes we find that people of like skill levels, that can be very successful or it can be very unsuccessful. There might be a lot of competition. There might be no competition. So it really depends on the people that we support. And I love families. Families will tell you, we've got an open door. I don't care if people come by whatever time of the day or night. You might not ever find somebody home. They might be out and about and doing things, but people are more than welcome to come by anytime if they're a family member. This is the client's home. And I think that's one of the things that staff members struggle with sometimes, because if they work in a home 5 days a week, or even in the old days when a lot of our shifts were what was called 56-hour shifts, they kind of took on ownership, and it's constant for us to be reminding people that this is the person's home. They listen to their music, it's decorated the way they want it to be decorated. It's pretty fun, okay? It's pretty delightful, but it can have its own challenges. And then the second, well, right up there with good roommate matches are probably good staff to client matches, because everybody has their own tolerance level. Everybody has their own person that they like working with. For me, whether it's the families that we work with at VRS or the clients that we support, for me, I've always liked the people that kick, scream, bit, hit, all that good stuff, because at least they had motivation, and we could go places and do things. And I always have fought for the people that have challenging behavioral issues, just because they are more difficult to support. And I think if I had a disability myself, I'd probably be kicking, screaming, biting, scratching, and otherwise making life difficult for some people. So I can kind of relate to that. Some people do better with people that have medical issues, major medical issues, and are medically fragile. Some staff members do better with people that are calm and maybe not so motivated, but like being in their homes. So it's always a challenge to make a good match with staff members and clients. So I have to tell you tonight, just before I got on this call, I got the best news I've had in 12 years about funding. So those of you that helped us with this, I thank you very much. I'm sure Angie helped, Cindy helped, maybe people I didn't even know helped. But in 2008, when the stock market took a dive, our funding took a dive as well. And it was already less than optimal. The way it's worked since 2008 is there's been no dedicated funding increases. Any funding increases we've had to kick, scratch, call people, really get on an advocacy way to get our funding increased. For most people, they don't think about things like this, but the minimum wage increases severely affected us, probably more than anything that we've gone through. And I am supportive of minimum wage increases and being able to make a living wage. But what happened was that it squeezed out those people that may have been working for us for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because then they found themselves not making much more than minimum wage. And the way our funding works is kind of complicated. We have an ISS, which is the direct support staff rate, and then we have an admin rate. Since in the last couple of years, they actually raised the admin rate for the first time in 14 years. And historically, Valley Residential Services has poured some admin money into staff. And it's just mandatory for us because our staff are the backbone of our agency. They're the people that work directly with our clients. So before I got on this call, I learned that, knock on wood a lot here, folks, knock on wood, pray if you're a praying person, keep your fingers crossed or something, because they're looking at a 23% increase for our ISS, which is our direct support costs for this next year. And that's only been because of all the advocacy. What's happened with our programs in the since 2008 is that our staff at that era were making 23% better than minimum wage. Now they're making 5% better than minimum wage. So you end up getting people that either have been out of the workforce and want to start back in the workforce, which is always kind of nice because homemakers make great staff for the most part. And then you get 18-year-olds right out of high school because nobody can make a living at 5% over minimum wage. So I'm hoping and praying that this sticks, and I'm thinking that it's going to. People are assuring me that usually when it's been looked at by both the Senate and House and modified and approved, then it will stick. But keep praying, because I'd say since 2008 we've had a very rough road. In the last 2 years since COVID, it's been incredibly hard. We have, in the state of Washington, supported living has had an almost 50% turnover in direct support staff. Ours is at least 40%. Think about it. People have a revolving door of staff people, and we're just clutching on to them, hoping they don't leave, and doing everything we can to make it better for them. And people have to make a living wage. They can't work 2 and 3 jobs at the time they're my age, for the most part. So we're hoping it sticks. I have to be honest, there was a time during COVID that I almost thought we were going to close our doors. I thought it for a fleeting minute. And then it worked out that we didn't have to because DSHS actually did something very supportive for us. And it isn't usually like that. So I'm open to any questions, comments, concerns, or a big hallelujah. Let's hope it's
I just want to say that I've been in the homes, several homes anyway, of VRS, and those staff that stick with it are wonderful. So there's just very good staff, and I mean, through the COVID and through being stuck, oh, I couldn't imagine. You know, being stuck indoors basically for a good year anyway. With the clients not being able to go outside or anything, they just were very creative on how they did things. I was hoping that you could share a little bit about maybe some of the houses, like how they're set up, the creativity that has happened over COVID of houses and things like that. And then if there's any questions, of course.
And then maybe a little bit about, Nancy, the growth of people when they get out of their own family home and into.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be something parents would really like to hear.
I might start crying about this, okay? Seriously, this has been really touching because our agency, I'd say we're probably one of the most micromanaged kinds of agencies that anybody ever knows. We've got all sorts of people coming in, checking on us, doing all this other stuff. So sometimes we forget the good things we do. We really do. When someone comes to us, we think, okay, so what do we need to do differently? How do we need to support this person? We have a person that actually the family chose to keep him home at the start of COVID because he's pretty fragile and he has Down syndrome, and people with Down syndrome at that time, we were told, had a very, very high percentage rate of getting COVID and getting extremely sick. So they were probably right to keep him home and keep, it from the revolving door of staff people and all that. But the family, the dad in the home was in his 90s and he couldn't go up and down the stairs. So our client ended up on the upper floor, was pretty much basically bedbound or on a chair, either sitting in a chair or in bed, because dad couldn't go up and down the stairs, and his other son would come over and help our client and make sure that he had food and water and that he was changed and everything. And so at that point, he was in Depends and had almost no mobility. And I mean, if this scenario sounds familiar to you, just try to put it aside because I can't tell you specifics about this person. But we seriously thought about ways creatively that we could get him home because we think of his home where he lives with his roommates and staff as being his home. And so we had talked about getting the paramedics to come, and they were willing to come. And this person is very phobic. He's scared of everything, and it breaks your heart. He's pretty much not very verbal. It breaks your heart. We were scared. He's like our family. We've known him for years and years and years. So eventually it turned out the dad got pretty ill, and so the decision was made that he needed to call home. And so remember, he was almost non-ambulatory and in Depends when he came back home. Now he's walking, he's eating on his own, he's happy, he's well cared for, he's toileting again. So he's not in Depends anymore. And I'm sorry, every time I talk about it, it makes me cry because it's a miracle. And other people probably, if he'd ever gone to a nursing home from the family home, he probably wouldn't have been up walking. And we've had people go to nursing homes because they had some really difficult thing to treat or something. And we hate that. We fight. We fight like cats and dogs to keep our folks home. And if they have accessible bathrooms and they have a good level of staffing and all that, we can keep them home. But sometimes other people feel like a nursing home is the best way. Angie probably remembers one of our folks who went to a nursing home, and we fought to get him home. And another situation, he was barely ambulatory and independent and everything else. And then he got home and he was walking again and talking again and eating, and it just does your heart good. And then I think it's really, it's so rewarding. People call me the skills training Nazi because nobody believes in skills training as much as me. No one. I don't care what the level of the person's disability is. They can do something. They can do something with support, if nothing else, with physical assistance. So hand over hand, they can do something. And so I'm a big pusher on skills development, and it's been pretty funny sometimes when the staff have been, or they might be brand new working with a client, and I'll come in and I'll say, well, so she's gonna cook lunch, and they'll go, she can't cook, and I'll say, you bet she can cook. And then by the end of that, when she's only needed me to model a few things, they're a believer. There's just, people can do amazing things, and like I said, I don't care what their challenging behavioral issue is. I don't care what their skill level is. They can always learn. And that's, I think, been one of the biggest rewards of my life, to see people learn when others have said they can't do that. And it's like, okay, this is an example, right? So one of our clients came in, it was a couple of years ago now, came into the office, and he was wandering around, and he came up to me, and I think he was going to try to give me a hug or something. He brushed my hair and he kind of scratched my face a little bit. So I looked at his fingernails, and they were like jaggedy and everything. So I said, you want to, work with me on cutting your fingernails? He scrounged a pair of fingernail clippers, did a hand over hand, and he and I cut his fingernails, and then he pointed to his feet. And the staff person was in somebody else's office, and they came back in and they said, oh, so we're going to go home now. And I said, so he and I cut his fingernails, and the guy said, oh, I'm so glad you did, because he won't let us touch them. So what if I'd heard that first? Would I have tried to even do it? Maybe not. So I always tell staff that story and tell them, it doesn't matter if they wouldn't do it for somebody else. Maybe they like you better. I'd say for the COVID times, it's been a real struggle to be getting people out in the community, which is another mission of ours. And it's a different world now with employees than it was. I mean, people got fired for stuff years ago that we don't fire for because we don't have adequate staffing, and one of the things is people just don't want to get people out, and it's a constant thing. So now we're starting on trying to educate people about getting people out in the community, accessing the community, going to events, when COVID completely goes away, because it's such a foreign thing. It's just, yeah. People with disabilities are way, way, way more capable always than people think they're going to be. There you go. How's that? As I'm crying and I'm laughing.
It's great. And for those that have young adults, 14 and older, right? 14 and older, they have they give out cooking and craft kits every Wednesday. 1 week it's cooking, 1 week it's craft, and you just call Valley Residential to get on the list if you want to do that. They do wonderful things, and that was funded by
county. I have to thank the county for that, because that was a county grant from the ad valorem funds that come in from taxes, and it's just been a reward for us. I mean, it's been a great thing, because a lot of people in the community don't know us, or they might have bad feelings about us for one way or another, and this has just been a great thing all the way around. So the way people live, there's people that rent their own places from community landlords. There's family members that have purchased houses for people. There's Blue Mountain Action Council, who has built houses from the ground up for our clients. And I prepared a thing on the housing crisis in Walla Walla County, but I'll save that for another day. That's probably next to the funding, staffing crisis we go through every day. The housing issue is definitely right up there.
Well, I would also like to think that just talking to our legislators locally every year, like all the time, getting there, I think probably has helped with the hopefully 23% increase. So it's always important, if you have something you're passionate about and you hear and you think it might help our community raising, children and adults with disabilities, reach out to them. So is there any questions for Nancy?
I'll tell you one more thing. This year, the department bent their ever rigid rules, and they're allowing us to provide services in the client's home that she shared with her mother. And mom has a separate part of the home that's only mom's part. This is a first for DDA, and I can only talk them into it because of COVID and our constant staffing crisis. So it's pretty sweet.
Any questions for Nancy?
Thanks for having me, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left, so we'll move into, well, we have till 8. So I'm not gonna, when I say a little bit of time, don't rush. Our next speakers are Terry Huff and Carla Nibbler, and they're gonna talk about what they did with their sons. But I'd like you guys to share a little bit about yourselves first.
My name is Carla Nibbler. I have a 33-year-old son with autism. He has intellectual delays as well. And his communication, he's not very articulate. So I met Terry, and my background also is under Terry's supervision, working for the county in the past, I also did the Birth to 3 program, and I was what they called the senior parent-to-parent coordinator, working with families who have kids middle school age and older in the past. I have been a helping parent probably for 20 to 25 years, something like that. And also, I had the pleasure of being involved with Cindy Knight and Angela Beam in starting the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network. And the reason we did that was to support parent to parent. So anyway, I hand it off to you, Terry.
Well, my name's Terry. I go by Carla in case I do something wrong, then that no one really knows it's me. So that works good for me. I have a 34-year-old son with trisomy 21, Down syndrome. In my previous life, I was a banker. Then when my child was born, I moved to this community and attended a meeting at the county. And it was when 5 counties in the whole state of Washington were picked to test the Birth to 3 program. It didn't exist until then. And I was the Birth to 3 coordinator. And of course, then it rolls into other things, parent to parent. Then we started parent to parent and on from there. So that's what I've done. Now I'm retired.
Well, what I was going to mention is Terry and I met when the kids were probably about 2 years old. It was my understanding that Mark had a delay. I knew he had a delay in speech, but I thought he was going to start talking and everything was going to go away. He'd be all better. Well, that's when I met Terry with Parent to Parent. She was very patient with me. And that's when we started getting engaged with a parent-to-parent program, and Mark started taking special ed, preschool, etc. And we became friends over this time period, over the years. And it's not because the boys were best friends. I mean, they were at the same events, but they are definitely the odd couple. I mean, they are so different, so different. But we became friends, and we both shared the thought, of which Terry initiated, is that once our kids are out of high school, they needed to live independently in the community. I wasn't so sure of Mark's capabilities as Terry was. Why don't you
When my
take it from
son
there?
was born, a social worker came in, and because of my age, they expected Down syndrome. And when I saw this little baby, I figured that's also what he had. And she said to me, "What do you plan for your child?" And I said, "Well, I had two other sons. I planned for him to move out just like his brothers." And she wrote on my report that I was in denial. And I thought, and of course, I always read my reports, and I thought, what an odd thing to say. Why wouldn't I expect him to be as independent as he possibly can? I mean, we should, all of us parents, should never not expect them to be as independent as they can. I have two master level, or had two master level sons. I tell you what, Brian and Mark are 100 times better at cleaning and cooking and following the rules than those two other dudes are.
Well, and I come from a large family, and every morning when we got up to go to school, every one of us had a chore that we had to do before we went out the door, as well as make our bed. And on Saturdays, we couldn't leave the house till we got the chores left that Mom had on the counter all done. So I was raised in a family where I never thought anything of it. You know, the kids in the household just have chores, you know. So we started at a fairly early age, like I said, practicing and practicing and practicing independent living skills. And some of the things, Terry and I were talking about them last night, some of the things are personal hygiene. My son and I, and Angie, you can laugh at me here. My son is a typical autistic individual, which 80% have some sort of bowel issues. So personal hygiene and keeping himself clean was really important to me. And we started at a young age on that, as well as, you know, deodorant. When he shaves, he won't look in the mirror. So, you know, he'd shave all the way up to here if I wasn't careful, you know. So, you know, just teaching them all those little things. And cooking, Terry's family, she comes from a cooking family, Terry. So you want to?
Yeah, cooking was really important. And in our home, we had 3 boys. And on Monday night, the boys made dinner, starting at a young age. We started them about 8. So for all of you parents, you can imagine we ate a number of really gaggy Monday night dinners, but we did it and we loved it until they learned to really cook. But Brian also was in that because, again, it just seemed odd to us not to teach him. Now, we didn't give him the sharpest knives in the drawer. When he made the fruit salad, he used the butter knife, but he just made adaptations. And everyone in my home, because it was all boys, and I wasn't going to have to cook all the time, they all learned to cook, every one of them. All my daughter-in-laws loved me. But
That's
but yeah,
true.
so that was something we did. And when we started with the boys, shall I go into how we started the food thing with the boys? So
Yeah, that's fine.
One of the things we did with the boys when they moved in together just out of high school was, this is what you should teach your children. how to use a rice maker, a crock pot, have a 4-cup glass measuring cup, and a microwave. You can make any meal with those. And we started out like putting together ingredients in a Ziploc bag and freezing it. The boys would fling it in the crock pot first thing in the morning, turn it on, go off to work and play and whatever, and have it when they got back. 2 cups of water in a 4-cup glass in the microwave, turn that on, get it boiling 5 minutes, take it out, rip open that package of dried instant potatoes, put it in there. The boys made potatoes. The boys made dinners, potatoes, you know, a cup of rice, a cup and a half. All of these things the boys got perfectly. Mark advanced on and can make cookies in the
That's why we have a calendar with his weight on it every day. So,
yeah, we do keep an eye on that.
yeah. So anyway, going down this independent living skills, these are just some of the things that we taught the kids from home that they have perfected. They even now with their laundry, they separate it into colors. Their housekeeping skills are amazing. They have to keep their entire duplex, and we'll talk about that in a minute, clean themselves. They make their own shopping lists and they go out and shop on Sundays. Use of money. Money is important. When Mark said he didn't want to go to work last Monday, Gary asked him how he was going to get the money for the rent and did he want to move back home? And that was a big no. So anyway, use of money, how to navigate in the community. So we're talking about Valley Transit and the like, and knowing what stop signs are and all those sort of things. Stranger safety. I have to say we still work on that. We talk about it all the time. And yet Mark got in a car with somebody, I don't know, a couple months ago. So keep working on that.
I won't do it. We taught all the kids a code. The person has to be able to give you the code. I mean, that's the thing. It's only one word they have to remember. And if the person, even if one time it was my neighbor and Brian refused to get in the car. Actually, one time over in Seattle, it was his aunt and he wouldn't get in the car with her because she didn't know the code. So, but doing the code. But the money, I want to say, you may think that your son or daughter may not be able to do money, but Mark is very good with money. Brian, on the other hand, does, if it's $12, he'll give a 10 and a 5. If it's anything over 15, he'll give a 20. So by the end of the month, he has what we call his dancing dollars. His wallet is about this thick, full of dollar bills, like he's working a pole somewhere. But anyway, so we go in and empty that out and give him 20s, 10s, and 5s. But Mark does change and everything. So don't assume your child, your son or daughter can't do money. Because really, that's one thing. Mark can do all the good stuff, and Brian can do, if it's 12, then it's a 10 and a 5. If it's something over 20, then it's a 20 or it's more 20. So it's good.
Okay.
Money is good.
The use of calendars. We have calendars all over the house, and I know Angie will show you maybe some pictures. Okay, that's Mark's weight calendar. And that shows on the weight, what his weight is each day. And he smiles if he goes to BMI to work. And then on Thursday, he smiles because he goes out to senior center to work. He delivered 1,300 cookies, I don't know, some way that day. And then on Friday, I don't know why it's an unhappy face, but he goes out for community, what do you call it, Ange?
Community inclusion.
Thank you. So anyway, that's what's on that calendar. Now, the calendar on the right doesn't work. This is his calendar for the bathroom. And Mark like Brian, is sometimes a bit OCD. So what happened in the past is Mark would put calendars, big or small, depending on what his use in the bathroom was, so to speak. And now he wants it every other day, a big sticker. So I have no idea his bathroom habits and don't know what to tell the doctor. So, but he won't change that. He won't change it.
And here is
So
the
the
big
next-
calendar.
And the big calendar, this one, for all the parents that are on this thing with us, this calendar, Angie can give you a printed copy. This is the best thing in the whole world because it lists every single solitary day what Brian is responsible, what Mark is responsible. The green thing at the bottom has a list in it, like where it says clean the kitchen. Now, this
There's
is what I'm
one,
saying.
two, next, why don't you show it the next slide down
Is it
real
the next-
quick? And it has a picture of, yeah, that
There.
slide.
Well,
Yeah.
no, this is the dusting. Oh, where'd it
Yeah.
go?
Okay,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's
Okay.
it. So when it says to dust, it literally tells them exactly where these guys, you could eat off the floor. I'm not kidding. Every one of you parents can do this. Every one. My master level boys have no idea what the word dust means, but Mark and Brian, they could be winning awards. That's their house is spotless. Spotless.
So there's a
And they don't
little,
fight
there's-
about cleaning or nothing because it's whose ever name they do it. But
So is that
and-
what's in the green here?
yeah, there,
That's
and
what's in the
it's
green
in there
envelope.
for all of their household chores. And the person next to Mark there has been working with Mark for 15 years. And I always tease, Deborah Pryor was in the military. She was a Marine and she works great with the boys.
oh, she's wonderful.
She's worked
Yeah,
great
so-
with Haley too at school. So
Yeah. Okay, so after we teach them all these things, then we started asking, once the kids were going to graduate from high school, we started talking about, well, do we want the boys to live together and for us to find housing for them, et cetera. So when we talked about it, we talked about, can the kids get along on a day-to-day basis? And they are the odd couple. I mean, Mark's very quiet. He does like some things like bowling and crafts and puzzles and the like, but he takes his showers in the morning and he likes to be out and about the house. Now, Brian, Terry?
Brian does his showering in the evening and he plays games in his room and goes to work and goes for a walk around the neighborhood and goes to the market.
Yeah. So we talked about their routines and would they jive? Because for instance, the first house they lived in, there was just one bathroom. In fact, so this was a bigger thing actually than the kids almost getting along. And that was, how do we agree, Terry and I, on finances needed, you know? What did we think was a decent place to live? What did we think about rent? Were we going to share provider hours? What did we think the kids need for groceries every month? Shared expenses like utilities, internet and cable, and meal prep. We decided to hire to have this done. One thing I wanted to tell you is if you expect in our type of living situation for everything to be exactly 50-50, it won't work. Because we get the grocery money and Brian is much more interested in food and that sort of thing than Mark is. In fact, Brian writes up, sends recipes to the gal that does our food prep.
And the recipes are chicken cordon bleu,
Mm.
you know, yeah, And
Yeah.
their favorite is shrimp linguine.
Yum.
You boys are eating better than us.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. I need to go to their house for dinner.
I
Now,
know, we can't get her to make it for us.
who
We've
does the
tried.
meal
No.
prep for you?
Deborah Pryor.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is Mark pays the utilities and Terry pays the internet and cable, and the internet and cable's more, so I mean, Terry and I don't sweat the small stuff. So we decided to do it, and we talked about the chore calendar. We have an events calendar. Before COVID, Deborah took the boys out once a month for dinner, and they had a big jug, and in the jug was the name of all these slips of paper with the names of all these different restaurants, and they picked one out each week, and that's the restaurant that they'd go to. And in taking them out to them, we talked to them about, proper manners out there, and talked about different foods and how to order and things like that. And also
how to leave the tip. How to leave the
how to
tip.
leave a tip.
I mean, those are the things that our sons and daughters need to learn as well as everybody else. And the boys went to darn near all the restaurants, I think, in town, except T. Macrone's, because it was
Yeah, they didn't go to the
too
expensive
expensive.
one.
We didn't put that one in the jar. But they did, and they tried things, and they go, and they know how. They know how to behave out in public, and they know how to tip.
So tell us about your first apartment.
The first apartment was on a second floor over at Lionsgate. That was
Beautiful.
our first apartment.
Yes,
It was
beautiful.
really
'cause they were
nice.
Brand new. Weren't
Yeah,
they?
it was brand new. It was really nice. The boys did really well. We wondered how they do right away out on their own, but it was all cool to them. And
They were shoving us out the door as quick as could be.
but we had a little bit of trouble with the toilet in the bathroom. And one day, did we hear from, was it the manager or was it
Because
Brian?
Brian went down. Yeah.
So the toilet, we kept telling him we were having troubles with it, and the toilet overflowed. And Brian went downstairs at 7 in the morning looking for the manager, but the manager's not there at 7 in the morning. So Mark didn't bother him a bit. He just went in, he took his shower, wandered through the water, which, by the way, is leaking now down through the ceiling and the wall
Apartment on
below.
the first floor.
And Mark gets ready, and I kept telling Terry and Angie too, thank God he didn't plug in his electric razor that morning. But he just got around and went and watched TV. He didn't give a thought about it, never called me, nothing. But
Brian hung out in the gym area until the manager came.
Which was probably around 9 o'clock or something.
And then went to tell him.
Yeah. So
Flooding.
anyway, we went through a little bit on that, and didn't have to pay anything in the end.
But folks, you need to teach your sons and daughters how to shut the water now, because this is, I mean, we laugh about it all the time, but this actually is something that quite often happens to our sons and daughters. Teach them how to shut the water off to the toilet. Okay,
Yeah.
you know, right behind the toilet, teach them how to turn that and shut that off just in case.
So after that incident, it was brought to Terry's attention, somebody she knew had a duplex. And it was a one-bathroom duplex. And the boys were there for 9 years.
Mhm.
And again, all this time, they had the help of Deborah Pryor coming and going during the week. Now, there's no overnight help, and our boys are capable of that, and they have been taught safety about fire, etc., and all that. So
I will caution though, try not to get a smoke alarm that has a female voice, that says something, because then the boys will call you on the phone to tell you there's a woman in the hall that keeps talking to them when it's trying to tell them that the battery is getting low. So just get one that beeps. There,
Because
it
they
works.
turn off the voice. They just,
yeah,
after a while, they don't listen to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a hard time finding one that would beep. So anyway, Gary and I own a duplex, and it had been occupied for quite some time, and one side was opening up. So we decided that this was time to renovate that and make it a forever home for the boys.
Mhm.
So we have all the grab bars in the bathrooms, and updated it so that they should be able to live there a long time. And it's two bed and it's two bathroom. And Brian has a bigger bedroom with his own bath because he likes all of his stuff in his room. And meaning computer, TV, etc. So
man cave.
anyway, he was real excited about that. But then Deborah said to him, well, Brian, you know, you're going to have to clean your own bathroom every week. It's just like, what? So anyway, it was kind of fun. So that,
But it went
that
on the
has worked
calendar.
out.
Again, it went on the calendar. If it's on the calendar,
It's
they do it.
law.
They absolutely do it.
Yep. There's now another reason this setup has worked out so well for us. Like I said, Terry and I get along fine. We don't sweat the small stuff. Here the boys are doing some of their chores. The other reason is we do have an exceptional team that works with the kids. So Deborah Pryor is their care provider. Like I said, she's been with Mark now for 15 years and Brian for 11, I think it is. And also, she takes Mark out bowling every Tuesday night to a neurotypical team so that he has that experience bowling. And also, she makes sure that Brian is set up so that he goes on Fridays, and you might tell him what his Friday routine is.
So on Fridays, he goes to the bank. So Brian walks every day, and he has a pattern that he walks. And Mark also does. They're funny. Again, you tell them to do something, they do it forever. But on Fridays, he goes to the bank and gets out money, which is another thing to think of, parents. Think about giving your child a account, small, not access to a lot, but their own account that they can go down. This is the credit union for Brian. He walks down, or he goes down with Deborah or whatever, and he goes into the bank and he gets the money. And the thing about it is, you guys, Carla and I have talked about this a lot. I call it 10,000 eyes. I have 10,000 eyes on my son, Brian. Everybody in the market keeps an eye on him where he goes. Everybody at the bank keeps an eye on him. And one day, a different provider went in with Brian, and the lady at the bank called me to make sure that this person that was with him while he was drawn out, he draws out a weekly amount of money for himself to spend on whatever he wants. And he goes and gets pizza. He buys pizza from Papa Murphy's every Friday. He goes to the movies every Sunday. And so the more eyes you have on your sons and daughters in the community, the more protection I have found they have. Bus drivers keep an eye on Brian and Mark. Well, and Mark too at the market. And if we go in there, or any of his relatives go in there, they're like this. I saw Mark, or they'll say, Mark didn't come in today. Does anyone know why Mark didn't come in today? it's probably one of the things that I feel most comfortable about are the number of eyes on our kids. Because I can tell you right now, nobody could do anything to those two boys that there wouldn't probably be a dozen people chasing them down the street with a stick, you know. I just want you to think about that, parents. I know we always seem to be very protective of them, but really widen your circle. Widen that circle for your kid. It's amazing.
Terry told me this a long time ago, and you know, Haley is very social, so she's out all the time. I get calls if she's walking with her brother to the store, or luckily the neighbors look out for her, because if I'm in the basement, she thinks I'm not home, and she goes and borrows their phone to call me. But this is a story. This is how the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network started the You Made a Difference award. Is Kayla was driving from high school one day and saw one of our kiddos in our program walking alone, carrying a like a plastic bat with him. And she stopped and said, well, hi, you know, and said his name. And he's like, well, how do you know my name? And put the bat out, they hit her. And she just knew that something was off. So she got out of the car and talked to him. And he thought that he was left alone at the house. So he was walking to his grandparents' house. But he was kind of lost of where they lived. So she was kind of helping with that. And she called me. So I called the parents, and, you know, the dad was in the shower. You know, mom had no idea he was missing, and the dad figured it out and was starting to go look for him. But just having those eyes, you know, our children sometimes will wander. But yeah, we go everywhere we go. Haley, everyone says, hi, Haley. I'm like, who is that? You know, but it's somebody she met at school or youth group, or, you know, wherever
Or one
else.
of the bus drivers.
One of the bus drivers. Yes. So we have some pictures if you want to see. Go ahead and keep talking, or you guys ready for questions? Do you have more? Yeah, feel free to talk some more, or we can take questions.
Their house is really clean. I wish they'd come and do mine, but it's
I
not on
tell
the
you,
calendar.
yeah, you guys need to do a training with our typically developing children as well. Is there any question for Carla and Terry? Here they are doing laundry.
I have a question, Angie. It's Sonia.
Hi, Sonia.
I was wondering, do they ever use a debit card with their account, or do they just stick with cash?
So I tried a debit card with Brian, Sonia, but a debit card makes no sense to him. So and unfortunately, I didn't think to teach him about a debit card. I mean, my grandchildren all have them, for crying out loud. But I didn't think about it. I did cash. So he doesn't, debit cards, he can't see their value, so they make no sense.
I see.
So, but if you taught your son or daughter to use a debit card and to keep track of its balance, I bet you $1 zillion they'd have it figured out in just a couple of months.
Now, does Brian ever lose money?
Oh gosh, no. Brian had 2 older brothers, and his middle brother would borrow money from him when they got it on Monday, and by Wednesday that middle brother would be poor and he'd borrow money and he would never pay Brian back. It took him about 1 month to figure out that you don't loan money because you never get it back. He's tighter in his money than a Scotsman is with his Scotch.
That's good to
The
know.
reason I never did a debit card, I think Mark could do a debit card because he
Probably.
actually likes to add and subtract. So I
Yeah.
think Mark could do it. However, I've never done that with him. Mark, unlike Brian, Mark, we're guardians. We have a guardianship, and the paperwork's really strict, and it's just easier for me to keep track if I give him cash versus a debit card and trying to figure out what's going where. Just easier for me.
Because you're on his account, right? I imagine.
Yeah, we both are.
You
Yeah,
can
they're
monitor.
payee
Uh-huh.
accounts. Yeah.
And you don't have to keep track of spending money, do you? Or do you with the guardianship?
I don't, no, I can say miscellaneous expenses or whatever, but, Mark has a real sweet tooth and we try to monitor some of that. If he doesn't have the money, can't spend it.
I should point to on my
Sonia,
list.
Brian, I'm not Brian's guardian because my son also is a registered voter in the state of Washington. And back in those days, he couldn't be a voter if I was full guardian. So I'm his representative payee for his Social Security, but he has his own separate account, Sonia, with money in it that comes out of his job. So his job money goes into a separate account than the representative payee one that I do all of his bills from.
Are you a power of attorney for medical? Terry?
Not at the moment, but probably we're gonna do that.
So you've gotten, how old are the boys now?
Brian's 34, Mark's
How have you
33.
gotten how have you gotten through that?
Because when Brian went into the doctor and whatever, he said, you can share this information with my mother. Because everyone in the world can do that. And so
Right.
Brian just would go in and do that. Now that the state of Washington allows the voter things, we will more than likely be getting the power of attorney just for the medical stuff, just because.
Well, that's what I've been doing with Haley, but I know that someday it's not going to work. We just sign a kind of like the release of information every year that she can talk to me and I can see all her medical.
Yes.
They don't straight up ask her, do you want this surgery, thankfully, because she'd probably say no.
Yeah.
So they haven't done that yet. That's what's worked for now, but I don't trust it.
Yeah, power of
be
attorney, I think is a very good thing. And again,
It's less
Brian's
work.
a little different, and so we didn't do it. And all of the people that know me, it's extraordinarily important that our sons and daughters have the ability to vote if they can have the ability. Yay, Washington.
I was gonna say that the young man with the laundry basket is Brian, in case you guys haven't met them yet. And then the other one with the soap box there is Mark. So I didn't introduce them. Let's see what else we have here. Well, this is the calendar. It's not all work. It's not all they do is work. They get to do puzzles and I mean, they have a social life as well.
Yes.
But I had to include that in there. Oh yeah, and here's the other one with Mark warming up his dinner.
That is a good picture of my son. That's going on the Christmas card.
Oh, yeah.
He's smiling, yeah. And then there, of course, that's the desk. I would love to have you ladies come back and share like in person, or maybe we could do a tour of the house. I don't know. Someday when COVID is no more. So I do have a poll for everyone to take before they get off.
I do want to bring up one thing if I can.
Yes.
Nancy Riggle, God bless you. The one thing that's so nice about Valley Residential Services, if like me having guardianship, if Mark went through your nonprofit, you would do all the paperwork. And that's something to keep in mind too, because the paperwork for guardianship is not fun. So,
And the paperwork for payee-ship, we have one person that's dedicated to client finances. And yeah, those kind of things are not fun. All of that stuff is
No.
not fun. I truly believe in a full continuum of supports for people. There's no one perfect right answer.
yep.
And sometimes as people age, they find them needing more of a supported living kind of environment. You know, it's just our needs ebb and flow, and the needs of the people we support ebb and flow as well.
That's right.
The thought that Carla and Terry made sure that the bathrooms in the new duplex were handicapped accessible, because we're finding that more and more, because we serve people from 18 to death if that's what's needed. And people do need handicapped accessible units after a while sometimes, for the most part.
Thank you all. I am very thankful for all of you, you know, taking your time in the evenings to share with us, and our presenters. Thank you so much.